Got a job as Laura's assistant, I thought I was set for life. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be locked away like a prisoner in Azkaban. Hi, my name is Jolene. My life changed drastically about 3 months ago. Before I continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. If you do, you would win $1 million within the next 7 days. It really works. I was looking through the classifieds for a job while sitting on my bed in my tiny apartment when the words personal assistant needed caught my eyes. I mumbled to myself as I carefully read the ad. Need one female personal assistant, age 25, 5 foot 5 inches tall, slim build, short wavy black hair, that goes by the name Rebecca. Pay per month $5,000 plus bonuses. Call 555-7625 for more information. My eyes widened when I realized the amount of money that would be paid. Well, my name isn't Rebecca, but I sure look the part. I grabbed my phone that was sitting next to me and called the number. The person on the next side gave me the address, as well as the time of my interview, which was carded for the next day. I arrived at the address by taxi. And to my surprise, it wasn't an ordinary work office as I had expected. It was a mansion. I jumped out of the taxi and pressed the intercom nervously. "Hi, good afternoon," I said in the best customer service voice. "My name is Rebecca Miller, and I'm here for the job interview." I waited for a few seconds. The only response was the opening of the huge gates that seemed to close off the mansion from the rest of the world. I approached the front door and pressed the doorbell. The door was opened by a slim, elderly man with a solemn face who was dressed in a butler's uniform. "Good afternoon," I said politely and extended my hand. The man ignored my hand, which I placed by my side once more, and said, "Follow me." He waited for me to enter before closing the door behind us. He walked briskly, and I followed in silence. Everything we passed seemed like a blur to me. I was trying to get a glimpse of everything when I bumped into someone. "Excuse me," I said, embarrassed. The lady in the maid outfit just smiled and nodded as she went about her business. We came upon huge ivory doors and stopped. The man knocked twice, opened the door, and nodded at me to enter. I smiled and entered the room. He closed the door behind me. As I walked further into the room, I noticed a slender woman with large blue eyes and blonde wavy hair sat behind the desk. I approached and she greeted me with a smile. "Hi, Rebecca. Have a seat. My name is Laura Hamilton." We talked for a few minutes, and to my surprise, she didn't ask for my resume or even my identification. I was in luck. "So how soon can you start?" Laura asked. My eyes lit up. "I got the job! I got the job!" I celebrated in my head, but I calmly responded, "I can start today if needed." "Great, let's get started," Laura said. The next 3 months were amazing. I scheduled Laura's appointments and helped her plan her dinner parties. We ate lunches and dinners at the finest restaurants. She even took me shopping and bought me a new car. "So, Rebecca," Laura asked one night as we were having dinner at a restaurant, "what about your parents? Any siblings?" I swallowed and replied, "My parents travel a lot for business, and I am an only child." I drank some wine and continued, "Do you and Mr. Hamilton have any children?" Laura's face looked blank as she responded in a faraway voice, "My husband was lost at sea, and my daughter—" Just then, the waiter approached our table. "Do you ladies need anything?" Laura's blank facial expression faded, and she returned to her usual jovial self as she chatted with the waiter. When the waiter left, Laura turned her attention to me. "I have a business trip to go to tomorrow, and I was wondering if you would like to accompany me." "I would love to!" I exclaimed. "Great. We will stop by your place so you can get your passport and whatever else you may need for the trip." My mind screeched to a halt. My passport. My passport had the name Jolene Miller, not Rebecca Miller. I gulped down the last of my wine and wondered how I was going to talk myself out of this one. After dinner, just as planned, Laura's chauffeur, Alex, drove us to my place where I collected my stuff. "What am I going to do now? The jig is up, Jules. You better confess sooner than later," I mumbled to myself as I packed my bag. After packing and securing my tiny apartment, I headed back to the car and contemplated whether or not to tell Laura about the lie that I spun to get the job. I decided that tonight I was going to make the best of it and let tomorrow see about itself. As soon as we got to Laura's, Laura excused herself. "I have a few things to finish organizing for our trip tomorrow, but let me show you to your room." I sent all the staff home for a little holiday since I would not be here for the next few days. My room, just like everything else in Laura's house, reeked glamour. From the king-sized canopy bed to the expensive piece of art that covered the walls. I sat on the bed and thought about my dilemma, and before long I fell asleep. I opened my eyes slowly and sighed. "Well, Jules, today is the day. Time to kiss your new job goodbye." Something was different. I looked around slowly, then shot into a sitting position. Where the hell am I? I tried to move off the bed, but tumbled off awkwardly as my foot was chained to the bedpost. This wasn't the glamorous room that I fell asleep in. My heart stopped and my blood ran cold. Why was I chained to the bed? Where was Laura? What the hell was going on? I shrieked as I tugged at the chain. I shouted for help for what seemed like hours, but no one came. I sat on the bed and cried. I probably fell asleep because when I awoke, there was a tray with some sandwiches, a mug of juice, and a note in Laura's handwriting. Dear Rebecca, thank you for coming home. I have not seen you in such a long time. I know that the last time we saw each other, we got into a huge fight. I just wanted to tell you that I am sorry. I have chained you to the bed in the basement because I just want to keep you safe, where I can keep an eye on you. I don't want to lose you again. Love, Mom. This is not happening. This is not happening, I repeated to myself as I tugged at my hair. Laura, my name is Jolene, not Rebecca. Let me out of here, I screamed at the top of my lungs. If the staff really did go home, then there was nobody left on the large estate that could hear me. I sat and sulked. The chain was attached to the bedpost. Then I got a brilliant idea. All I needed to do was kick the bedpost out and the chain would fall out. I kicked, pushed, tugged on that bedpost like my life depended on it, because it did. I wasn't about to be held captive by some psychopath. Finally, the bedpost came loose, and I was able to move around. My arms and legs ached, but at least I was free. I noticed there was a small window at the top of the basement. There was a table and some boxes in the corner. Maybe I could squeeze through the window and escape. It was already dark. The moonlight was shining in, highlighting the night creatures that ran across the basement floor. I wish the basement was as glamorous as the rest of the house. I panted as I dragged the table across the floor, then piled the boxes on top. I climbed gingerly to the top of the makeshift pile, but my heart shattered when I realized that the window had solid steel bars. There was no way I could get those loose. Hi, Becky. I stumbled down the pile and crashed to the ground with a thud. I'm not Becky, I yelled. My name is Jolene. I looked around the room frantically and noticed 4 cameras, each placed securely in the 4 corners of the room. That's how you escaped last time, honey, so I made sure to secure the windows this time, Laura said sweetly. Last time? I scratched my head in disbelief, talking to myself. Then it hit me. Laura had done this before. The ad for a personal assistant was extremely specific, even down to the person's name. But I never questioned why she would want the person to be named Rebecca. Who was Rebecca? I paced the room back and forth, trying to think of ways to escape. I searched for secret passages, a key that may have been left behind. I even ran and smashed into the door, hoping that it would budge. Well, that didn't turn out too well either. The only thing I ended up with was a bruised shoulder. That basement was my home for the next 7 days until something truly bizarre happened. While asleep, I felt someone place their hand over my mouth before quickly covering it with duct tape. The person was dressed in all black and wore a black mask. I fought against the intruder and was able to knock them to the ground, and I ran. My legs felt like jelly as I pulled the duct tape off my mouth. I sounded like Scrooge's business partner Marley from the Christmas Carol, as the chain that was still locked to my foot dragged behind me. I tried every door and every window I came upon, but they were all locked. I needed to escape. I felt the walls closing in around me. Suddenly, it went black. Someone had thrown a black sack over my head and thrown me over their shoulder. How unlucky could a girl get? First I was held captive, and now I was being kidnapped? But why? The person was much stronger than a person I fought with in the basement. The person moved quickly, and soon I could feel the cold breeze on my exposed legs. Where are you taking me? My muffled scream sounded from the bag. I heard a door open and I was thrown into the back seat. The screeching of the tires alerted me that we were now moving. I waited for what seemed like an eternity before the vehicle stopped. I heard the door open and I began to kick and scream once more. Hey, lady's voice said, we're here to help you. I was a bit confused at first, but I still sat and allowed her to take the sack off my head. You? I said much louder than I intended. It was the same maid that I bumped into the day I had the interview with Laura. She greeted me with a warm smile. Hi, I'm Angela, and this is my partner. She waved at the man coming around the van. Jeff Hamilton. What? Where? Incoherent words fell out of my mouth. I was so confused. Laura said you were dead, I said, looking at Jeff. Well, I can assure you that I'm not, Jeff said with a smile. But why? I asked with a puzzled expression on my face as I looked from Jeff to Angela for answers. Well, Jeff said, scratching his head, my marriage to Laura was arranged. She was always so stern and tense. She wanted everything done her way. She was bossy and mistreated me and the staff. I always felt stuck in that marriage. I wanted out. So when the storm hit that day and we were on the yacht, I made my escape. My body was never found, so everyone just assumed I was dead. A few months after my horrific accident, I met Angela. I confided in her, and we've been inseparable since. Jeff winked at Angela and she blushed. I looked at Jeff and raised my eyebrows. But who is Rebecca? I watched as pain flushed Jeff's face. He dipped into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He removed a picture and handed it to me. This is Rebecca, our our daughter," Jeff said softly. My jaw dropped open. I felt as though I was looking at a picture of myself. "What happened?" I asked, handing Jeff back his picture. I watched as he secured it in his wallet, then his pocket. "Rebecca died in a car accident about 6 months ago," Jeff choked. Angela placed her hand around his shoulders and comforted him. Jeff continued when he was more composed. "I am sorry that you got mixed up into this. You were not the first person that Laura has done this to." My eyes widened and I felt my stomach churn as Jeff told me about the 3 other girls he had to rescue from Laura's clutches. He pointed at himself and Angela, "have tried getting Laura the help that she needs, but she refuses. She has always been stubborn." "So what happens now?" I said half aloud, wondering if I were dreaming and if I would soon wake up. "It's not safe for you to go home," Angela said quickly. She opened the front door of the vehicle and in her hands was a key and some clothing. She handed me both and said, "Hurry, we have a private plane waiting for you, but you need to hurry. You can't go back to your apartment in case Laura shows up." Jeff chimed in. "I am pleading with you. Please don't tell anyone about this. Laura doesn't need to go to jail. She needs to get help. I am willing to give you $10 million to disappear and change your identity. Now get dressed quickly. Time is against us." Jeff closed the door to the vehicle and I was alone with my thoughts. As I unlocked the chain with my leg and dressed into the clothes that were given to me, I thought about my choices. I could take the $10 million, escape, leaving my parents and old life behind while hoping the next personal assistant makes it out alive. Or I could go to the police and make a report. Please, viewers, help me make a decision. Leave your answers in the comment section below.
Hi, my name is Johnny. If I were to tell you that one word managed to turn me into a millionaire, would you believe me? Well, let me tell you, it's the truth. The word no made me a millionaire. And if you don't believe me, keep watching to figure out how it all happened. Usually these stories about how people become millionaires always start out with the people claiming they lived a poor life, they were so miserable, etc. But actually, with me, that's not how it started out. I wasn't rich, definitely not, but I was happy. My family and I could afford small holidays sometimes, and we didn't really need to be too concerned about getting food on the table and a roof over our heads. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. We were somewhere in the middle. But before I go on, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and smash that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these awesome stories. If you do this in the next 5 seconds, you will become a millionaire when you're older. Trust me, it really works. When I was 16, my dad had us move to a new location for his job. He had gotten a promotion at his company, and even though I was really sad that I had to say goodbye to my friends, I was happy for him. He told me this new job was really exciting and he loved going to work. My first day at my new school was pretty hectic, to say the least. You see, I guess I was considered quite the handsome guy, or at least that's what lots of people told me. I didn't really know what they meant, to be completely honest, but I guess there's always the saying that people see you as 20% more attractive than you see yourself. Well, when I first got to school, I was surprised to find a lot of people wanted to be my friend. The new friends that I made told me a lot about how the girls thought I was cute and wanted to go out with me. I was pretty overwhelmed, but excited to know that I was popular. I was pretty much popular with everyone, that is, except for a peculiar guy called Michael. Michael was in the same class as me for pretty much every subject, and for some reason, he hated my guts. Whenever we were around, he would give me death stares and whisper insults under his breath. I'm pretty sure he was just jealous of me. One day, I was sitting at my lunch table when Michael appeared. He had a tray of food and pretended to trip over so that all his food landed on me. I easily saw through his act and stood up in anger. "What do you think you're doing?" I yelled. "Oh, sorry about that, Your Majesty," he said. Then he started laughing and walked away before I could say or do anything else. I was furious and I wanted revenge. So my friends and I made a plan. We would sneak over to Michael's locker and fill it with something really embarrassing, so that when he opened it up, the whole school would see. We agreed on the plan and got all of it ready. Pretty soon, the next day, Michael walked over to his locker to get his books, while my friends and I waited around the corner. We were giggling and shoving each other because we were just so excited. Finally, Michael opened it up and out came a flood of stuffed animals. Michael stared in shock at all the teddy bears and bunny rabbits that spilled over his feet. And then he looked up at us in anger as he saw our red faces bursting with laughter. "Aw, is Michael a wee baby?" teased one of my friends. "Does Michael need a diaper?" I thought that was a little too harsh, but I couldn't stop laughing at Michael's face. He looked so mortified. The other students standing nearby started laughing too. Michael yelled out, I'll get you back for this, Johnny. And then he stormed off with a look of pure hatred. We kept laughing until the bell rang for class, then we headed off with tears of laughter streaming down our faces. In class, his last words echoed in my head. I'll get you back for this, Johnny. But I wasn't too concerned. What was the worst he could do? Little did I know, Michael was capable of doing a lot. And if I had known what he would have done next, I would never have pranked him. I came home one day to find my father in the living room with my mother, who was crying. What's going on? I asked in a panic. Johnny, there's something I have to tell you, said Dad. He motioned me to sit down next to him, and then he started to explain everything. I've been fired from my job. What? I said in surprise. But why? I have no idea, but don't you worry. We'll work things out. But how will we live if you don't have a job? My dad hesitated and looked at my mom. I'm not exactly sure, but I'll make sure things are fine. I'll get a new job. But, Johnny, you know how the saying goes. What doesn't eat you makes you stronger. I nodded in agreement. He was right. We would make it through this. We could do it. But it was so shocking. Why would he be fired all of a sudden? Hadn't he just been promoted? Surely he hadn't done so bad a job that his bosses had to fire him. The next day at school, I was feeling blue. My dad had no job, we were worried about money, and I may have to move away again. I told my friends about it and they comforted me, but then I heard an evil laugh come from behind me. When I turned around, I saw it was Michael. Your old man's been let off now, has he? He sneered. Shut up, Michael, I snapped. Michael laughed again. I wonder why he got fired. Michael, you can just stop, I started, but then I froze. I realized something was wrong. There was no way Michael could have overheard what I told my friends. I had whispered it to them, and yet somehow he had managed to overhear from 3 meters away. I turned to Michael and asked him if he had anything to do with my father's sudden sacking. Maybe, maybe not, said Michael. I stood up suddenly. Michael, please tell me you're joking. Michael laughed again. My father may or may not be the owner of the company your father works at, and I may or may not have asked him to fire your dad. I felt my jaw drop. Why would you do that? Michael's smile disappeared, and he looked angry. Because you're mean and you don't deserve all this popularity. You should just leave this school. I wish your father never got that transfer to a promotion. That way, I would never have met you. Why do you hate me so much? I asked. What did I ever do to you? Michael didn't say anything. He just turned on his heel and ran away. It was a good thing he ran away too. I felt so angry, I could have punched him. On the way home from school, I contemplated whether or not I should tell my parents about what Michael had done. It would definitely help them a little to know that my dad hadn't been fired because he was bad at his job. But then they'd realize that it was all my fault. If I hadn't unconsciously made an enemy of Michael, then my dad would still have his job. I decided I would have to drop out of school or something. Get myself a job. I knew it was a desperate attempt, but I was gonna do it. On the bus ride home, I started planning out how I would get a job. I could work at a restaurant or maybe a grocery store. The money would be little, but it would be something. But suddenly, I was pulled from my thoughts when I noticed a man in a business suit standing across from me. I was in a seat, and there were no other available seats on board. I stood up and tapped the man on the shoulder. Here, take a seat, I said. The man smiled gratefully and sank into the chair, obviously exhausted. Thanks, son. He paused and looked at me. What's your name? Johnny. Nice to meet you, Johnny. You can call me Ben. We didn't talk for a few minutes, but then I asked him what his job was. I thought I could maybe get a few ideas for my own future job. I'm the host of a game show, he replied. I didn't expect that answer. Wow, like a money game show or something? Yeah. Man, I wish I could go on one of those. My dad just got fired and I want to get a job to help out, but I know it's not going to help out that much. I'm pretty stressed out. Ben smiled. You know what? Why don't you come on my game show? You're a handsome lad. The viewers will love you. I couldn't believe my ears. Wait, are you serious? Sure. The bus was slowing down and Ben stood up. This is my stop, but here, call this number. He handed me his card. And we'll work out a time and date. I couldn't believe my luck. Thank you so much. No worries. Ben smiled and walked off the bus. That evening, I told my parents about my meeting with Ben, and we immediately called him to figure out when would be a good time to shoot the game show. We worked out a date a week from now. I was so excited. I started studying material and general knowledge every night. My parents helped me too, and would test me a lot. I was a pretty smart kid already, so it wasn't too difficult a task. We found out that the highest prize on the game show was $1 million, but we weren't aiming for that because we knew it would be really difficult. Instead, we tried aiming for smaller prizes with the best chances of winning. Pretty soon, a week flew by, and it was time for my appearance on the game show. We drove over to the filming set where I was prepped up in a suit and tie, and within a flash, I found myself on TV, live on air, seated across from Ben. "Ready?" asked Ben. I nodded. The first question was, which animal has 3 hearts? It was a multiple choice question with 4 possible answers: llama, octopus, squid, monkey. "Octopus," I replied. The buzzer sounded, revealing I had answered correctly, and just like that, I got $5,000. The questions seemed to fly by, and with each correct answer, I realized I was getting closer and closer to the $1 million cash prize. Before long, I found myself at the very last question. I was so stunned. How had I managed to answer them all correctly? I couldn't believe my luck. Ben smiled and gave me the final question. "For this one, you either have to answer yes or no. Do you understand?" I nodded. "Okay," said Ben. "Is Sydney the capital of Australia?" I hesitated. My immediate answer would have been yes, but then I wondered if this was too easy. It must be a trick question of some sort. And so, without really knowing whether this was right or wrong, I said, "No." Ben smiled again, and then golden lights shone from all the buzzers. I had won! I had won $1 million! I couldn't believe it. My parents ran on stage and we jumped for joy. We did it! We actually did it! For the rest of that week, we celebrated like kings and queens. I gave a lot of my money to family and friends, but saved up most of it. My friends were so happy for me, and I felt so good walking down the hallway, knowing that Michael knew I had become a millionaire. Revenge felt so sweet. I ended up telling Dad about Michael, and so he immediately went to his boss and demanded he reconsider. Turns out his boss had fired him because Michael spread the lie that my dad was a cheater and was actually a past criminal. For a while, things were great. I loved being a millionaire. It certainly had its perks. But then, alas, like all good things, it came to an end. I was at home one day when I got a call from Ben. He told me I had to go to the filming set immediately. I was so confused, so I headed there with my dad. When we arrived, we saw the filming set had been prepared as if they were about to shoot another show. Ben was there, and that's when he explained everything, and my world came crashing down. He had said I had to answer the last question again because he had accidentally read the wrong answer from the card. That way, my win for $1 million didn't actually count. I couldn't believe my ears. I could lose all my money. I thought I had no choice, so I agreed and sat on the seat. Ben pulled out a card and cleared his throat, then read the question. "This is a fill-in-the-blank answer. You understand?" I nodded. "All right," said Ben. "Fill in the blank for this popular saying. What doesn't blank you makes you stronger. What is the missing word?" I smiled. My dad told me this all the time. "Eat," I replied. Ben's face fell and he shook his head. "That's incorrect." I felt my stomach drop. I turned to Dad, who was seated in the empty audience chairs. "But you always told me what doesn't eat you makes you stronger." Dad scratched his head and looked confused. "I thought that was right." "The correct answer is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger," said Ben. "I'm sorry, Johnny, you lost all the money." I felt like I was gonna cry. I put my head in my hands, but then, all of a sudden, a loud alarm started to ring out, and Michael appeared from behind a curtain. "Ha! You just got pranked, Johnny!" yelled Michael. "Of course that last question wasn't an accident. Get pranked!" he teased. I was stunned beyond words. "So the money is still mine?" Ben smiled. "Of course, Johnny. Sorry about that. Michael hired me here for this prank. I really am sorry." Michael laughed at my shocked face. "And we got it all on footage," he said, pointing at the cameras. I was still speechless and glanced at my dad, who looked speechless too. I was glad the money was still mine. But man, Michael was a weird kid.
Finally, it was here. Our last day of school. Samantha was my best friend. We had been friends since our first day at school when we were 5 years old. It would feel strange not seeing her every day. But Samantha was starting a job at our local grocery store, and I was about to start my own business. We had the whole world ahead of us. But then the unthinkable happened, and I ended up in a coma. But before I go on, make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more shocking stories. I remember my first day at school. I was so nervous as I waved goodbye to Mom at the school gates. "Bye, darling," said Mom. "Have a wonderful day." I found my classroom and sat next to a blonde-haired girl. She looked just as scared as me. "I'm Tina. What's your name?" I asked her. "Samantha," she replied. We were best friends from that moment on. We did everything together, told each other all our secrets, who we had a crush on, etc. Sometimes we liked the same boy, but we never fell out over it. We were both happy whenever something good happened to the other one, like the time we both went for the lead role in the school production of Cinderella. The head of the drama department told everyone that the cast list would be on the notice board after school. Samantha and I joined the crowd gathered in front of the notice board. "Congratulations, Tina," said Carl. "You got the lead role, and I'm Prince Charming." I was so happy. I turned to look at Samantha. At first, I thought she looked angry, but she smiled at me. "That's fantastic, Tina," she said. "I'm so happy for you." When we were in our final year of high school, I told Samantha what I wanted to do when I left school. I wanted to open my own business. I'd been working on a new invention for about 6 months, and finally it was starting to take off. I had rented a warehouse and had made a prototype. I felt so proud of my new business. You're probably wondering what my product was, and when you hear about it, you'll probably laugh. But I was proud. I had invented a pizza-shaped shoe. I knew that everyone would love it once they saw it. Every night after school, I went to the warehouse and worked on the production. When me and Samantha walked out of the school gates for the final time, I felt so excited for the future. "I'll call you when I get home, Samantha," I said. "I'm going to the warehouse." "Okay," Samantha said as she ran off to catch the bus home. I worked on my pizza-shaped shoe for a couple of hours. I was so happy with it. It was exactly what I had imagined. I climbed up the ladder to put it safely away, but as I reached the top, I suddenly felt dizzy. Everything went black and I fell from the ladder, banging my head hard on the floor. That's how I ended up in hospital in a coma. For 3 years. Of course, I didn't know anything about it. My poor family took it in turns, but they never left me alone. Someone was always by my bedside, in case I woke up. I could hear voices around me, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. I could hear machines beeping, too. I opened my eyes. The light was so bright it dazzled me. Where was I? Doctor, Tina's waking up." I recognized the voice. It was my mom talking. I looked at her and smiled. "Where am I? What happened?" I asked. That's when Mom told me everything. I had been in a coma for 3 years. Mom told me how they had gone to the warehouse looking for me when I didn't come home. They had found me lying on the floor at the bottom of the ladders. I was unconscious. They had brought me to the hospital. The doctors had warned them that I might never wake up, but they never gave up, hoping for a miracle. I couldn't believe it. "But what about my business?" I cried. "I was just starting out." Mom told me I had nothing to worry about. In fact, I had a lot to be happy about. You see, whilst I had been in a coma, Mom and Dad had continued my business idea. It was a huge success. Everyone who was anyone was wearing my pizza-shaped shoes. They had put all the money in my bank account for me, and now I was filthy rich. Eventually, I was able to leave the hospital. I couldn't wait to get to work, but the doctors had told me I couldn't rush into anything. I still needed to rest. It was about 3 weeks later that I eventually took over the running of the business from Mom and Dad. At first, everything was fine, but then things started to go wrong. I couldn't understand it. I was running things exactly the same as Mom and Dad had done, but we were losing money. It wasn't that noticeable at first, but then it got worse and worse. Sales were dropping, and I knew that if things didn't change soon, then the business would be bankrupt. It didn't make any sense. What was I doing wrong? I asked Mom and Dad to meet me at the warehouse. "For the sake of the company, I need to resign," I told them. "Can you two take over running the business again, please?" "Yes, of course we will," said Mom. "And you will get the same percentage of the profit," said Dad. "Enough for you to live on." I found a small house. It was all I could afford with the money I was receiving from the business. The house was run down, and it wasn't in a very nice area, but I would be okay. I just didn't leave the house in the evening. It wasn't a safe area for a girl to be out at night alone. Beggars lined the streets, and homeless people slept in doorways. It was actually quite depressing. I sat watching TV one evening when my phone beeped. It was a message from Samantha. I hadn't seen her since I stopped working on my business. Every time she suggested meeting up, I managed to come up with an excuse. I told her I was busy or not feeling very well. This message was the same as all the others. She wanted to come and see me. but I couldn't let her see how I was living. I was so ashamed. I ignored her message, but then she started calling me. I knew I couldn't put her off forever. She wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually, I answered her call. "Tina, finally! I've been trying to get in touch with you for ages," said Samantha. "I want to come see you." I gave Samantha the address and told her to come over. About 30 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, saw Samantha standing there. "Come in," I said. Samantha came in and looked around her in astonishment. "Why are you living like this?" she asked. "You have a huge business making lots of money." I explained to Samantha that I had resigned from my business. I told her all about how since I had taken over the running of it, everything had gone downhill. She looked at me sadly. "I have something to tell you, Tina," said Samantha. "I didn't want to say anything because I know you were close to your mom and dad, but now that I see how you were living, I have to tell you. When you were running the business, your parents were sabotaging the sales on purpose. They wanted the company back for themselves." Could it be true? Will my parents really do that to me? But there was no other explanation. I knew what I had to do. I wanted to get my revenge, and I knew exactly how I was going to do it. What my parents didn't know was, whilst I was working on my pizza-shaped shoe business, I was also working on another business idea. I was going to expand into fruit-shaped shoes. I would take on my parents with a rival company. I started working on my new line, banana-shaped shoes, apple and orange-shaped shoes too. I found a new warehouse on the other side of town and opened my new company. It wasn't long before everyone was wearing my new fruit-shaped shoes. Nobody wanted pizza-shaped shoes anymore. Fruit shoes were the latest trend. I knew I had ruined my parents' business, but they deserved it. I was successful once again, and I had one person to thank for it, my best friend, Samantha. If she hadn't told me the truth, I wouldn't have opened my new company. I decided I would take her out for dinner. I called her and asked her to meet me for dinner that evening. When I got to the restaurant, Samantha was sitting at a table. "What's the occasion?" she asked, and I sat down next to her. "I wanted to treat you to dinner to say thank you," I replied. "If it wasn't for you, I would never have opened up another business. Now I'm even more successful than before, and my parents are paying the price." Samantha smiled at me. "Oh, that's what friends are for," she said. I felt so lucky to have Samantha for a friend. I knew she would do anything for me. The next day, I was in my office when my phone rang. I looked to see who it was. It was Dad ringing. I answered the call and listened as Dad told me how worried he and Mom were. He told me that the business was really bad. Their sales had been dropping over the last few weeks. I felt sorry for Dad and was starting to feel a bit guilty that I had caused him all this worry. But then I remembered what they had done to me. "Tina, we can't afford to pay you any money at all this month," he said. "Our new competitor has wiped out our business. We are barely making enough money to survive." Little did Dad know that it was his own daughter that owned his rival company, that he was on the phone to his competitor. "It's okay, Dad, I understand," I said. When I put down the phone, I laughed to myself. Who cares if I didn't get any money from my parents? I had a successful business of my own. A few days later, I was at my warehouse working on another fruit shoe design when my assistant came and knocked on my office door. "There is someone wanting to see you," she said. "Okay, send them in," I replied. I looked up and was shocked to see my parents standing in the doorway, but they looked even more shocked. "Tina, what are you doing here?" asked Mom. "Don't tell me you have a job with our competitor." "No," I said. "I haven't got a job working for your competitor. I am your competitor." "What are you talking about?" asked Dad. "Why would you open up a business to rival your own parents?" "I think we need to have a talk," I replied. "Sit down and I will explain everything." I told them how I knew about all their attempts to sabotage my business when I was running it. I thought they would deny it, but instead they admitted to what they had done. "We only did that because we got an anonymous tip that you were planning to kick us out from the business," said Dad. "But I would never have done that," I said. "If it wasn't for you two, I wouldn't even have a business." "You have to believe us," said Mom. "Look, I still have the message. I will show you." Mom opened her phone and showed me the message. It was true. Someone had sent a false message telling them that I was planning on firing them. But who would do that? I looked at the number the message had been sent from, and my heart went cold. "I know whose number that is," I said. "It's Samantha that sent you the message. Why would Samantha do such a thing?" I was so upset and angry. "I have to go and speak to Samantha," I told them. "I need some answers." I went straight over to Samantha's house. When I got there, I knocked hard on the door, and a few seconds later, Samantha opened it. "Hi, Tina, come in," she said. I followed her into the lounge and sat down. I was shaking so much I could hardly get the words out of my mouth. "I can't believe what you have done to me," I said. Samantha looked at me. I thought at first she was going to deny it all, but then she realized from my face that I knew everything. Why would you want to destroy my life? I asked. Because you have everything, she screamed, suddenly losing her cool. You have always got everything you wanted. You got the boys that I liked. You got better grades than me. You have your own business. All I do is work 8 hours a day in a crummy job. I just want you to know how it feels to fail just for once in your life. I had thought she wanted the best for me. Well, I was wrong. I guess blood really is thicker than water.
Every day, I woke up, brushed my teeth, and headed straight to work for the morning rush. I worked at this pretty big and popular gym at the heart of the city. Folks like to work out before heading to the office, so it was pretty busy in the morning. I had to be there early to do my job as a personal trainer. I don't work there anymore, though. You'll find out why. Before I continue, make sure you're subscribed and that you've hit that like button below. Thanks. On that particular day, I noticed a new customer. I had never seen her before, and I knew everyone from the morning rush. This woman was staring at me hard. She had a different trainer, but I still noticed her looking at me when she was working with her trainer, and I was busy with a client. After about an hour, she was still there. I guess she didn't work because most people who started that early had already left. My manager approached me while I was getting clean towels and told me I had a new client. I wonder who, I thought, before my manager led me to the woman who had been staring at me for an hour. "Hi there, I'm Veronica," she said in a low voice that I supposed was meant to be flirtatious. "Tucker," I introduced myself, shaking the hand she had stretched out. Veronica wanted me to train her in everything. She apparently wanted to work every muscle group, so I told her how I worked. We went to the different machines and I had her do a rep or two, but she insisted I did them and she watched. I wasn't fully comfortable, but she hadn't crossed any of my boundaries. We jogged for a while, then she insisted we do squats. I told her her form was perfect, but she kept insisting that I correct her and show her the way she's meant to be doing it. I brushed it off and proposed we move to a different exercise. This business went on for a couple weeks. She started to get comfortable, sometimes grabbing my arm or laughing at literally anything I said, even when I was dead serious about her needing to stop suggesting that I should take my shirt off. We trained pretty much every day, and on the days we didn't, she would call the gym, ask for me, and not shut up for a half an hour saying how much she missed me. One day, she was back at the gym and she had me trapped with her, chatting about nothing. I zoned out, but she snapped her fingers before my eyes and brought me back to reality. "I was thinking, maybe you could train me at home," she said, putting her hand on my arm with affection that slightly disgusted me. I started making excuses, saying my manager would probably not like it or I didn't have a car to drive to her house. But she said, "Oh, I already talked to your manager about it. He says it's fine," she said with her pearly white smile. "And I can pick you up and drive you," she said. I turned to glare at my manager, but saw him sinking behind the counter, avoiding me. "Great," I said in fake excitement. I would definitely be asking my manager for a raise the second this lady left. I was standing on the sidewalk of my apartment building when I saw this red convertible speed close and park right in front of me, with Veronica wearing sunglasses and waving at me. "It's winter, it's freezing. Why do you have the top of the convertible down?" I complained as soon as I sat in the freezing leather seat. We drove for about 20 minutes out of the city and into the suburbs. 20 excruciating minutes. She had music blaring the entire time and wouldn't stop singing and asking me to sing sappy love songs with her. We reached a gate, which she opened with her fingerprint. We drove up her driveway until an enormous mansion came into view. It looked like a castle. I sat there with my mouth open, which Veronica saw and laughed at. "My sister and I own a tech company, along with shares in several other successful businesses," she explained. Then she leaned over and whispered, "We're rich," into my ear, as if that was meant to seduce me. She wanted to give me a tour of her house, but I insisted that we should go straight to her gym. She took me to the enormous room, which I was surprised to find was even better equipped than the gym I worked at. Why did she go there if she had a much better gym at home? I trained her at her own gym a few times, but also at the actual gym because I told her I found it more convenient since I was closer to other clients. It was also getting colder and she still wouldn't put the top of her convertible down. I thought it was because she wanted me to get cold and cuddle up to her, and thinking back, it probably was. One night, I was getting ready for bed, or more like eating a bunch of bowls of cereal while watching TV, when my phone rang. I groaned and got out of my cozy couch and blanket. I picked up the phone and was disappointed to hear Veronica's voice. "Can you come train me?" she said in what was closer to a baby voice than I would have hoped for. I looked outside and saw it was snowing violently. She insisted, and I insisted that it was snowing too much to get there safely. But right before I hung up the phone, she shouted, "I'll pay you double," which made me hesitate. She went on to say she'd pay me double, and not the gym, but me personally, meaning I would get double what she pays my gym, which is a lot of cash in my pocket. She said she'd pick me up and drive me home right after, so I sighed and agreed, before hanging up the phone and changing into my workout gear. I only went downstairs when Veronica rang the doorbell. She finally had the top of her convertible down, so at least I didn't completely freeze. She tried to make conversation on the drive there, but I stayed silent and looked out the window. I felt kinda dirty selling myself like this. I strutted quickly to her gym as soon as we arrived, ignoring her when she stopped by the kitchen offering me a cup of coffee to wake up. I was very strict during that session because I was so annoyed at her for requesting this and at myself for agreeing. Through the huge windows in the gym, I could see how much snow was falling. At least a foot of the window was covered with snow at that point. I could tell Veronica was regretting having asked me to train her because of how bad my attitude was. I was really acting like a drill sergeant. She finally seemed to give up and told me she was done working out for the day. "Great, let's go," I said enthusiastically, grabbing my bag and coat off the floor and heading towards the door. But she stopped me and pointed out the window. "I can't drive in the snow. It's too dangerous," she exclaimed. I wanted to scream at her. I was so angry I could burst. I asked her what I should do, if I should walk home if she wasn't going to drive me. "Well, don't be silly, you can stay in my guest room," she said with a smile. She grabbed my hand and led me up the stairs to the guest room. She gave me pajamas and all. "I'll be in the room down the hall if you need anything," she said flirtatiously with a wink. I almost threw up in my mouth and locked the door the second she closed it. Definitely didn't want her sneaking into my room in the middle of the night. I woke up the next day to a loud knock on my door. I opened it to find Veronica, who put her hand on my chest and pushed me back into bed before setting a tray of breakfast on my lap. She was wearing one of those fancy robes that rich women wear in movies after they killed their husbands, so naturally, I was afraid. She watched me eat and then insisted I should take a shower. I showered in the adjoining bathroom, but when I reached for the towel, I found it wasn't there. My clothes weren't there either. Did she sneak in while I was showering and steal them? I didn't know what to do, but then I grabbed the bath mat and covered myself with it before opening the door a little. I saw her laying on the bed I slept in, sniffing my dirty clothes. She saw me and pretended she didn't do anything before handing me a set of clean clothes. I put them on quickly and she rushed me to the car. The roads had been cleared of excess snow and salted, so the drive was safe. She wouldn't stop chit-chatting, even when we were parked outside my building. Suddenly, she grabbed my face with one hand and planted a kiss on my lips. I was stunted. She then basically kicked me out of the car. She waved goodbye and sped off, leaving me stunted on the sidewalk. We kept training, but at the gym, because I told my manager to tell Veronica that I wasn't allowed to train people at their houses anymore. After training one day, I was trying to get away when she invited me to her house as a friend. "I want to repay you for being so kind to me," she said while tracing circles on my bicep with her finger. "Why don't you come over for brunch on Saturday?" she asked. I don't know if it was the look on her face or the look on my manager's face, but I felt like I needed to say yes. I felt like I didn't have a choice, so I said yes, while dying inside just a little. I took the bus to her house. My heart was beating out of my chest, but from fear. I was so distracted, I almost slipped on an icy part of the sidewalk. She opened the door as soon as I rang the doorbell, took my coat, and led me to the dining room. I was surprised to see other people there. A young woman and 2 young men. I say young, but they looked around my age. They smiled at me, especially the girl. Their smiles all faded when Veronica spoke and said, "Kids, this is Tucker, my boyfriend." My eyes grew wide, and so did theirs. The 2 guys seemed to be fuming, and the girl just looked kinda sad. I was too frozen by what she said to correct her. She didn't even let any of us talk because she sat us right down and we started eating. Around halfway through the meal, one of the guys put his knife and fork down forcefully and shouted, "What the hell, Mom? He's our age!" Which triggered the other, and that one shouted, "And what's wrong with you, taking advantage of a rich older woman?" at me. I was stunned. Veronica started yelling at them, and they yelled back. The only quiet ones were the girl and me. I realized I needed to get out of that house ASAP. I snuck away from the table while they were all getting heated and started frantically looking for my coat. I looked in every room and couldn't find it. Finally, I opened a door I hadn't seen before and froze. It was a room full, absolutely full of pictures of me. They were all over the walls. The room was full of red lamps and lights. My stinky gym clothes were there. She had sweaty towels in there too. It all looked like a shrine to me. The woman was obsessed. I spotted my coat and snatched it, putting it on as I headed out the door, right before Veronica came running after me. The bus stop was a couple blocks away. I just had to outrun her. I heard a yelp behind me and saw that she had slipped on ice and fallen. I stopped, dead in my tracks, debating whether I should help her back up. I was about to go when I saw her sons coming after us. Hell nah, I thought, before I ran in the opposite direction towards the bus stop. My bus went past Veronica and her sons. She had mascara running down her cheeks and they were shaking their fists at me. But the more distance I put between us, the more I calmed down. I never saw Veronica again. As soon as I got home, I sent an email to my manager saying I was quitting. I also started looking for apartments and found a nice one with 2 roommates on the other side of town. You're probably wondering if all that was necessary. And yes, it was. I was terrified of living in my apartment after I saw that room dedicated to me. I felt like I'd be sleeping in my room and Veronica would watch me through the window, or worse, sneak into my apartment and kidnap me. I had nightmares about it. I only found peace when I moved out and moved far away from my old life. I became a gym teacher at a school because I supposed that if a creepy middle-aged woman was lurking around there, they'd call the cops immediately.